I'll go ahead and call the Board of Commissioners special meeting for Tuesday, April 26, 2022 to order. I'd like to welcome everyone here today. Madam Clerk, we've got all five commissioners here, two of which are in the back right now. We'll be out shortly. Obviously, our county manager, our county finance officer, and our county attorney are also in attendance, Madam Clerk. And gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, please silence any electronic devices you may have. Speaking of that, I will check mine again. And that being said, I'll move on to item number 2, approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the pre-submitted agenda?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. That will be 5-0, Madam Clerk. And moves us to item number 3, items for decision. General Services, Rollins Avenue Waterline Replacement Project. This will be presented by Mark Delahunt, our General Services Director. Mark, how are you, sir?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Burke County was awarded $300,000 of American Rescue Act funding, specifically earmarked for infrastructure. General Services identified the Rawlings Park Waterline Replacement Project as a good candidate for a portion of these funds. As we seek to proceed, one of the requirements is for the Board of Commissioners to adopt the resolution before you. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are these people that haven't had water for like 20 years or something that have been coming down?
This is
Every
actually,
meeting, but meetings over the 20-year period.
no, sir, this is actually a replacement, water line replacement. It's a location where the county came through and put their new water line. It came by a place, subdivision that was all on a community well system. And instead of replacing all the pipe in there, we just connected to the old well system water line, which is given us a lot of trouble now. It wasn't designed for these kind of pressure, so it's replaced that, so we'll have less maintenance in the future.
Other questions or comments for Mark?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, that obviously, Wayne, was installed before you and I came on the board.
Yeah.
Because we voted, I think, that all lines from that date we voted forward would be minimum of 6 inches. And this one is a 2-inch, so it had to be installed in the late 90s, I'm assuming. PVC doesn't rot, and you said the system's failing. What's failing?
It's a well line. It's, I think SDR-20 or something is a technical name for this kind of pipe, and it's thin-walled. It's, would be fine for a well system under low pressures of like 50, 60 PSI, but when you get up into the system, the PSIs we're now providing, which is up there, is 150, 200 pounds of pressure. We need the thicker wall, what's called C900 pipe.
So it shouldn't have been put there anyway. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I guess with that said, it should have been replaced when they took over the well system instead of now.
Mark, I'm a little surprised at the cost of that, $164,000 some other dollars. If you do the math, that's $13,600 and change for each one of those residents. Is that a lowest bid thing, or how did we get to that cost?
No, sir. This is a rough cost estimate provided by West Consultants as we went through a number of items when we first were given the $17 million and everything. I had a number of items, although this isn't part of that fund, but that were on the list, and I needed to get rough cost estimates on those items, and this is one of them. And when it comes down to it and the engineering goes out for bid, we're not quite sure exactly where it's going to come out, and there's no way of knowing at that time, till that time.
But the maximum is 164.
If it exceeds that, if the bids come in and exceed that, I imagine I'll have to stand up here again. I'm afraid so.
What's the timetable to complete the project?
That depends on engineering and getting a contractor, and from start to finish, I'd say 3 months or something like that. It's not very complicated. From the day we turned dirt to the day we covered all up, so to speak.
We got an example of the resolution to pass, but the blanks weren't filled in.
Yes, sir, if I understand you correctly, yes.
So when they get filled in, can we be provided a copy of that?
I'm
That's
sorry.
on page 3.
Yeah, it's in the agenda, I think.
Okay,
Copy of the resolution.
that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Any other comments, questions?
What's the status? I was just stopped in the store the other day by Ivaroni. In that area out there, I forget how many houses are out there, but that's a 20-year thing we've been hearing from too for water lines that those people are. In fact, I was telling me her son is building a house, I guess on their acreage, and he's got to put a second well in now. So what's the status of that area?
There's a number of locations that are within, I guess you'd call shouting distance of our current water line that would be primed for expansion. And that'd be something you all would have to discuss and provide direction on.
That's been over 20 years now that we've listened to those people. I mean, seems like an awful long time.
Any other questions or comments for Mark? If not, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to adopt resolution number 2022-07. Further authorize the county manager or his successor to execute any other documentations related to the Rollins Avenue Waterline Replacement Project, SRP-DARP-0071, on behalf of the board.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. All those in favor of the motion by Commissioner Taylor, please signify with uplifted hand. Madam Clerk, that will be 5-0. Mark, thank you very much, sir. And that'll move us to item number 4, items for discussion, finance, ARP project discussion, and this will be presented by Margaret Pierce.
And company. So we wanted to bring you some information that changed from the interim rules to the final rules that would be of interest to you. There's quite a few changes. They obviously took that small 400-page document and made it 1,000 to simplify things. But a couple of the big things were the revenue replacement. They took out the formula where you had to show that you had lost revenue and what that reduction was due to, and it can only be certain factors, and they have changed it that you can opt for a standard deduction. So what that means is up to $10 million can simply be classified as revenue reduction, whether you had a revenue reduction or not. One of the other ones was the radios we've talked about and been asked about quite a few times for fire departments, internal departments, and rescue squad, etc. Those became eligible, where in the initial rules they were deemed ineligible, they are now eligible. Ambulances, where there was some gray area whether that qualified as a public safety vehicle, that has been clearly identified as eligible now. Premium pay did not change for the better. Certain things relaxed, certain things tightened. So the requirements are still significant to be able to utilize that. You have to track a lot of different factors, average wages, what kind of calls they were on, what kind of contact they had. They can only make so much an hour. Exempt employees probably wouldn't be eligible without a written justification. It didn't help broaden those doors to identify more staff that might be able to use that. With that said, we looked into some of the things you guys have talked about. Housing, for one. There was a project that we spoke to Alan Wood about recently, among others, and several different scenarios we went to the School of Government with to talk about. One of the challenges is, first off, the money has to be spent within such a short time frame. So constructing a project or utilizing funds for any type of long-term assistance is not eligible. You have to be, whatever land it's put on needs to be owned by the county, not an outside agency. We would in fact be operating as a housing authority over any project. So we would have to create a mechanism to be a housing authority. We would have to, the income qualifications, again, are stringent on who could go into such a place. We would not be, we could partner with an outside agency, but there's serious limitations. We weren't able to look at the project that Alan was speaking with someone because they would own the property. They were looking for funding, just direct funding to buy property, and they would be the housing authority. And then according to the School of Government and the other research we did, that project would not be eligible. Not to mention it was not going to be completed within the 3-year time frame. It was a 10-year project they were looking at, and that's not feasible. Loan money, we can't loan it to someone else. That's not feasible. So we weren't really able to do anything with a construction of homes. Under homes, what you can do is partner with someone to do rental assistance. There are agencies in the area that might be opportunities to partner with that. Again, you'd have to contract, be very specific. You'd have to have income information on anyone they serve. They would have to open all their books to us for review, not just on this project, but on anything. So local agencies may not be agreeable to that always. So we looked at the HRC building that we talked a little bit about, and there's definitely some options there as far as how you could utilize some of this funding for that. The $10 million revenue replacement money, if we choose the standard allowance, that money can be used for any purpose that general government can do. So basically anything you budget for now could be done under that $10 million, such as construction of a building for county functions. You can't use it for salary replacement, but pretty much anything else can be used. Purchase of vehicles, repair of roofs, anything like that can be done under that $10 million. But the HRC building would definitely qualify. That was no problem whatsoever. You could also utilize funds under the health function of that. Because of the health department being in that building, they occupy approximately 20%. So 20% of any cost to do a building would be eligible under the outside of the $10 million. So you have options for that. We looked at the water services, expanding water lines that you spoke about. The challenge there is going to be, if we make revenue on those lines, we have to repay ARP for the revenue we make. So you don't really net out well on that one, and it causes more challenges because we need the revenue to do the daily operations. So they are looking at a technical correct to say only what you could deem as profits. They haven't defined what that might be. So I'm not certain it wouldn't be. Right now it reads that it's all revenue. Sorry?
I'm having a little bit of difficulty. Would you back up? If we make revenue, what?
We owe it back to the federal government.
If we make revenue, we pay back to the federal government. Okay. Thank you.
So,
I know that I was approached you, Johnny.
And, I mean, we've been sitting here for 20-some years, and these people haven't had water. I think that's a travesty. I mean, we sit here, we all probably have water and whatever. And I know she's approached different commissioners over the year, that group of people. But wouldn't it be wonderful to take some of that money? Maybe there's some restrictions there, but to get water to these people, how are they going to die before they get water? I mean, to me, that's just crazy. We spend money for everything under the sun, but we don't take care of our citizens.
so under the funding, that could be done under revenue replacement versus the water system. There's two ways it could be done, but one might be more cumbersome. Under the water part, the water infrastructure, you have to show that it's low income, it's new planned housing to the area, or it's verifiably unhealthy water. So you have to show the tests and everything, that it's unusable water there. They meet the income requirements to be able to run water lines to them, or it's a brand-new development that would serve the low-income population under the water side of it, not to mention you pay back the revenue. So there are ways to do it, not saying that. But I will tell you that you met Jessica Whitesides a few minutes ago, all of you, I think. And one of the things that we've challenged her with is CDBG, Department of DENR, the Department of Water Quality, and any other possibilities we can to see how to fund some more water lines. Felt like that might be a better option to look at, or in conjunction or outside of these funds. She's reached out to the COG and I believe the Department of Water Quality already to start getting some contacts, find out what it will take, when the cycles are. So we are definitely pursuing how to get some water line expansion, not just with these funds, because we did hear you that was important to you.
I just think it's a sin. 20-some years, we've talked to these people, they've come, approached us in the grocery store or whatever, and for it's over 20 years, but I mean, it's 20 years since Maynard and I've been here, but that we don't provide those services to our customers. They're going to die and be buried before they ever see water. And I think that should be one of our priorities, to take care of our citizens, and we're not taking care of our citizens the way I look at it. Water is a basic part of living.
So with that information, and I realize it may feel a bit limited, but I assure you there's lots more. Are there other things you want to talk about? Are there other ideas that I haven't mentioned that you want me to go into detail on?
Gentlemen, questions, comments? A lot of this is a little clearer now, but some of it's about as clear as mud still. It's a minefield.
It is. They are already telling us there'll be more changes to the final rules. Hopefully looking at some of the things, particularly the revenue is something we've asked NCACC, the NACO, and any other places where we can put in comments about things we want the feds to look at. Is that one's a challenge, and it's not understandable. We're not trying to go out and make $1 million off a $500,000 of theirs. We're trying to just take care of business and use a little bit of their money to get water lines in place, to get anything. And I didn't mention it, but the same thing applies to broadband. If we find a way to do broadband with ARP that works through either the CAB grant, which we still do not have the information on, they still haven't released it, or individually partnering with an ISP provider, that revenue as well will have to be paid back, and that's not revenue coming to us, but we'll be responsible for paying it back versus the ISP.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
On information you passed out to us before,
Yes, sir.
it says in that the water sewer projects must also comply with CWSFR and DWSFR requirements. Can you enlighten us on what those requirements are?
Yes, those are federal requirements under the Drinking Water Trust Fund. Am I giving the right acronym? And the Clean Water Trust Fund. So under those two, you would also have to go to their rules, each of which are several hundred pages, and make sure it falls under their guidelines as well. Unfortunately, some of these rules are a maze where it says, you're good right here as long as you follow this. So we've tried to do all the research, but yes. So water expansion is okay under those, but when you come back to the first rules, you have all the income requirements and different things you have to go with.
Well, one of the things that, and we learned a lot at the conference we went to about ARP. But it's almost impossible at the present stage of where we are with this program. And as you said, it's complex, a lot of information. We hired a specialist to help us with that, thank goodness. But I think what Maynard's looking for, and I may have to do it on my own, and I will if I do, but I want some kind of a summary of everything Burke County has or is involved in that would allow us to use some of that money or to get money from the ARP funding. And I want it in a form that you can evaluate. We can put out a lot of numbers, and we can put a lot out of words and all this kind of thing, but if I can use an example, and it's going to be a bad example, but it's the only one we've spent money for so far, or agreeing to spend money. If we refit the old jail to be a drug treatment facility, and the cost is $2.5 million, $3 million. What else could we do? We may benefit X number of people a year. Is there something we can do for that amount that we can assist 1,000 people a year? Does that kind of draw a similarity of what I'm going
Yes.
after? That I don't mind doing a little of my own mental work, but I'd just like to know. It seems like this board, to me, should identify all the things that this money can be used for. And second, this board needs to do is go back and prioritize which one of those are the most important and which one would help the most people and which would propel Burke County's use of that fund for the maximum benefit is received. Did I say that right?
Yes, sir. So I want to clarify one thing for you. The funds that we received, the $3.25 million to refit the jail, renovate it into a regional substance abuse facility, are not ARP. They are a separate funding from the state budget. They are not passed through ARP. They're totally different.
Okay.
So that one's over here. It's hard. We've got a lot of different pots of money coming in right
That's
now.
on the extra side there.
That's
Okay.
that's on the state side. That only has to fall under state rules, and actually, we are due to get the agreement on it before your May 17th meeting, so you'll see an agenda item. We don't have the written agreement yet, but the state expects us to get it in the next week to 10 days on that, but it will only be usable for that function. So that really doesn't have any impact on these dollars. Now, under these dollars, the one thing, like I said, that changed with the revenue replacement piece is that you can do anything with that 10 million that you can do under your normal guidelines, under your normal state statutes. They opened the door so that, I guess, to give some flexibility to governments. So anything other than salaries that you can do under your normal operations. You can fund nonprofits that are serving a purpose under those statutes with those funds. You can build buildings, you can buy vehicles, you can do maintenance and repair. Anything you can do already that you know that you're authorized under statute to do can fall under that 10 million. That was a
Well,
significant change.
So we could build water lines if we saw fit to make that a priority.
Yes, sir.
Well, it looks to me, Mr. Chairman, we're here to serve the people of Burke County, and we're not serving those people. And if we were in their place, I'm sure we would want water ourselves. And I just think, I go along with maybe 5 years they gotta wait, or 10 years, but a lifetime to get water, that just doesn't seem right. I mean, We're here to serve the people of Burke County. To me, we're not serving the people of Burke County that really need our help.
Any other questions, comments? And trying to give you a little direction here in some, I'm hearing water, obviously. But on, as far as those type of projects, we have no idea what the cost would be involved to maximize the, you know, if we had any, do we have any idea what, you know, when you're talking about specific areas, Commissioner Abley, you just, you know, there's one that's sticking out for clarity's sake. Where is that located?
It's, Maynard, what is that area down there? It's where I-
Parinelli Street, Burns Avenue. They applied, they built chicken houses down there and, wanted to use, county water instead of having digging their own wells. And we got a couple of chicken houses down there that wanted to do that. And Mark's still here. We really need to come up with policies for heavy water users, for discounts or whatever. And this goes all the way back, gentlemen, we're supposed to have, and I don't know where that stands, county manager, but Duke Power, when we settled that thing up at Lake James, they gave us an additional, I'm thinking 200 acres. And we discussed at that point that that's the cleanest water probably in Burke, Catawba County. And how much less treatment would have to take place to treat that water. And we've never talked about that anymore. We buy water and resell it, and it's worked good. There's nothing wrong with that, except that if we ever do become a major county with 300,000 or 400,000 residents in it, we will need such a facility to draw water from. And maybe that's expanding too much. Some people are telling me the good Lord's going to come home before that happens, so come and get us. So, but there's a couple other ones down there that I can't think of right now. But there was a petition field, and I don't know whatever happened to them. We never did relocate them that I know of. I aided in helping one of them with. I helped 6-8 roads down there when we were heavy and we were going to churches and making presentations and all that, and we got a lot of requests for water. There is an area that has a fault that the water's just bad, and it's loaded with so much acid and chemicals that, it's $4,000 or $5,000 for the equipment to treat it, and then you've got the treatment ingredients that you have to buy every month or every other month. And so I realize the economics of it too, Margaret. I mean, you can't do a $100,000 project for 5 people. It just doesn't make sense. But where it does make sense, and sometimes the only angle you got, it is a health issue. It's not because water is not available. The water there is not drinkable. So we got people down there that moved out of the house. The house been empty 15 years, brick house, because couldn't wash clothes, couldn't drink it. Moved out of the house, and it's still standing empty.
We can certainly have that area explored. Mark, did you catch all the street names? Are you familiar with the area?
From what I've overheard, I believe part of what I gathered early on, maybe a year ago, was some rough cost estimates like I previously discussed.
Okay. We can certainly look at those, whether it's with this money or any other.
The lady who made public comment at our last meeting
Right.
was from Burns Avenue.
Burns Avenue, I got, that was the road I heard you say. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
2 things, Margaret. One, could we ask Mark and his group to look back on some of these areas that we've discussed in the last 2 to 3 years where we've had folks come and ask for water. I know one that comes to mind is from Sugarloaf, Old 18 South was an area that I think we've looked at some in the past. And maybe look at some of the requests we've had and give us some ideas, kind of as Commissioner Taylor mentioned, so that we can look at the numbers of bodies that, you know, may be eligible for water and what kind of expenses. Just give us some rough estimates so that we might be able to prioritize some of these projects, and maybe this is an opportunity to make some water expansion. Secondly, it sounds like this $10 million, I guess you call exclusion, are those items that we need to keep out of our budget? Or can we put them in the budget and say this, we're going to use ARPA funds for these, or what's the process on that $10 million?
We can. Yes, we can take things from our current budget, we can budget them there and then shift them over. Correct? Yes, yes. Sorry. Between ARP and the state funds and the OPEB dollars, I always want to make sure I'm not answering incorrectly because some of them do have that non-supplant clause in it.
But as we're evaluating our budget request, that's something we can keep in mind, that, you know, that we may be able to designate certain items for the ARPA funds that we might normally not be able to fund, but perhaps because of those funds, this might be the time to do it.
Yes,
There's no strings attached to that $10 million, basically.
not really. No, it's fairly broad on that category.
So we could maybe choose those items where there might be some strings if we tried to get outside the $10 million. Maybe we can focus on the troublesome items within the $10 million, and then, you know, if we've got clear ambulance or other funds or other needs that clearly meet the ARPA standards, then maybe that's an approach to take.
Yes, sir. I will tell you, if it firmly falls into one of the identified categories, they're going to want us to use that identified category. So water lines, they're going to want you to report under the water infrastructure with the revenue and income attachments under it. So that's one where you may have to, we would look at funding it through general fund, where some things in general fund or in the water sewer fund currently, no, general fund would be best, or move to the ARPA funds to free up fund balance for these projects. That way you don't get involved with some of the restrictions under the ARPA, only under the Drinking Water or Clean Water Trust. Does that make sense?
Mr. Chairman, Jeff, if I may, about 100 years ago, funny, I made that suggestion, and the response I got back then, it was hard to track and keep it separate. And of course, the idea was that it gives you a false number of how many Burke County tax dollars you're spending. And one of the reasons that they gave that would be hard to do was because so many of it is matching funds. And if we match 10% or 20% and the government or state or grant paid the other, but I don't see it that hard to track. As a matter of fact, I think it'd make it easier for any accountant to track the money and give you an accurate picture of how many tax dollars we're spending for Burke County and how many dollars we're spending for grants and so forth. And I answered a question the other night that somebody asked me, and I said, well, if somebody and people have worked hard to get a 90% grant for Burke County, it kind of gets on the stupid side that you're not willing to pay the 10%. And we do that, but then the entire budget comes in on the side of this is how much our budget grew last year, and it really didn't grow that much. And I always look at it and do a similar deciphering to get where we really are. So, but I think it could be done, and I think it's so simple it would.
It's all in your audit.
Yeah,
It's all there already. Mhm.
it saves so much time on the other side.
So we can look at a lot of small projects, we can look at big projects. One of the things I do want to remind you of is there's timetables with this. We have to have it encumbered or spent by December 31 of 2024. If you decide to look at significant construction projects, we really need to move forward as soon as you feel comfortable making those decisions so that we make sure that's 2.5 years, but in a construction world we're in today, that's not as much time as you might think to get something designed and started. So I certainly want to just throw that out there, that the sooner we can maybe fine tune what you would like to do would be good, so that we make sure we meet all the timetables and don't lose any of these funds and have to revert them.
We also need to be probably somewhat cognizant, because if we give you too many projects, it's going to be, might not be feasible to, with your staff, to be able to balance all that. You know, I know fewer, bigger projects would be for the staff and easier to implement, whether it's a water project or, say, for instance, HRC replacement. And speaking of that on HRC, say, for instance, let's just use a round number, $20 million. So you could use 10 million, that unencumbered funds, and if it's a $20 million building, and there's also 4 million you could also use because of the health department has 20%. So you could actually use 14 million of the 27 million,
Yes.
quote unquote, cost of the building.
Yes, sir.
You know, obviously that's just, you know, I could say 100 million, doesn't really matter. It's just, I just wanted to make that point. I got that clarified when you said the portion
Yes.
for the health department.
Yes, that would be one route to go. As we know, that building has significant challenges. It doesn't have enough space for staff, neither DSS nor the health department. It's an aging building that is running into some significant cost. You asked the architects to look at perhaps some redesigns there. They have come up with a preliminary. They'll be here Tuesday at your pre-agenda meeting to present the executive summary of the full report and some numbers and a rough layout of what they think could happen if you build a separate building. And then Jeff had suggested perhaps remodel the existing building to allow for admin and some other departments to combine under that roof and create more space for them, where we're in buildings that have challenges in age and not enough space. So they do have some numbers that they can present. It is significant, obviously, that any construction right now, the numbers you're having to use, you'd like to think they're on their way down. If you talk to construction and contractors, some of it is starting to slowly decline, but it's still higher than it was. So it's going to be probably much more than $20 million, more like $34 million for HRC potentially. Now, that's just a very rough idea of what we might want to do with it. It could be brought down, obviously, if we redesigned or did some simpler things there, but that was a number that we talked about. So you'd still look at borrowing some money to go with that, no matter what you did.
I believe 100% that we should take care of our citizens, and I'll still stand by that. And I know some of you already have talked to some of these people down there, but if you haven't, I just wish you could just spend half an hour and talk to these people about water, taking something like a bath or whatever. I mean, it's not that this has been going on for ever and ever. This is not something new to be brought up. This has been going on and on and on, and we haven't addressed the issue for our citizens. And to me, that's what this job is all about, is taking care of our citizens if we can.
Mr. Chairman, one other comment or maybe a half question. Understanding that 10 million is in a kitty by itself and we can do anything with it we deemed necessary or want or whatever. So the question somewhere down the line should come up, since the EMS stuff is kind of an important issue, to say the least. But the fact that, the new EMS equipment, trucks and whatever, are longer and won't even fit in the same bays. So could we designate 2 million of that dollars to help build a new EMS station? Is that one of the things that we could or should look at?
Yes, sir. That would be an eligible use of the $10 million. We do have $650,000 coming from the state money, that separate pot that's not ARP. That's different than the 3.2 million.
Well, see, that's the kind of things that I'd like to know, you know, that's the reason I repeat, I think we need to know everything that we can do with it, and then as a board prioritize where those are that, you know, what's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 20, if
Sure.
it's 20, but what's one?
The problem with providing you a list is it's unlimited. It's anything you do now. And so to make you a list of that it's hard to, I don't know what you'd want on the list. The things we've talked about are things, you know, just that have come up that have been requests. We have different requests from departments. There's certain things they've asked about that aren't eligible, but that we know of, other than the new 10 million rule. But overall, they're not. COVID insurance, because we're self-insured, we could reimburse ourselves for any expenses that Blue Cross could identify as COVID related. We had them run that number. It's roughly $1 million. That's something that could be brought back into the county coffers because we can get reimbursement because we're self-insured. There's all kinds of things, and I apologize, but to make you a list would be 20 pages. I don't think it would help to make you a list of everything that's eligible. That's why we were trying to figure out what it is you'd like to do, and then we can get you cost or tell you that's not eligible other than the 10 million potentially. I'm sorry, we're trying to get you what you need, but the problem is it's an open door. It's not getting any tighter. It's only expanding when they change things, and because they're changing it constantly, it's a moving target.
Let me ask a question B to that subject then, and I get Johnny, that might be your question. Has enough counties got enough along that we can identify what the first top 5 or top 8 things that counties are doing with that budget? Can we get a...
What we're seeing online and hearing from peers and in comments and questions within the webinars we've done is it's all across the board. I think Caldwell, my understanding is they bought a very beautiful, it was online, it's a mass casualty ambulance that you can put up to 6 patients, I believe, in at one time if you have a mass casualty event. They did that with their funds. Wilmington did an entire department just to manage theirs because they had a much larger piece of the pie than we do, and they created a 17-person department and renovated a building for them to be in to manage the funds. They paid for all of that's my understanding with it. So it's a very broad target when you talk about what people are doing with the funds. It's whatever that each county felt like their needs are within the dollars. So we would be happy to go out and do some research and find what the top 8 things are, but you're not going to find 2 the same more than likely.
Well, there's probably enough talent around this table and in this room, we can come up with a list. My goal, of course, was I don't want a dream list, I don't want a wish list, I want legitimate things that will benefit the county and the taxpayers in some form or another. And we ought to be able to, quote, measure the results and success intended for that cost or expenditure. I can think of 2 or 3 just off the top of my head now, and of course, in today's world, 10 million doesn't go as far as it did 5 years ago, so you have to keep that in mind too. Thank you, sir.
I think the HRC building is going to be a significant cost to the county, be it renovations, new building, or maintenance repair in the coming years. It's going to have, what we've done is Band-Aids. Even with the changes to the air conditioning system, which have already impacted the utility bills in a positive way, and I think impacted their life, but they're not going to be enough. There's not enough space for all of the DSS staff today, and they know they need to grow to serve our citizens. So I do feel like that is a opportunity to serve citizens and impact them, is to have a place where they can go and meet with the staff they need to, and us have the staff to serve those citizens. That's one opportunity. The radios that you've got a lot of requests in this year's budget, from departments, fire departments mentioning that's what they're going to have to spend their funds on, because all the radios have to be redone by 2025 to meet the state's requirements, or they're unusable. So you've got a lot of money requests from those agencies that they're going to need to change their funding. Rate increases are coming from a couple of fire departments, and that's part of the reason they've got to replace this equipment. Our departments, to do EMS alone is about $120,000. So all the radios for the fire departments, our county departments, and Rescue and React are going to run about $2.3 million to do that. So it's, we weren't able to we did the BRIC grant, but we weren't part of the finalists. We were only in we did the pre-application portion, and we're not invited to do a full application on that one. So there are things out there that would really impact, some of them where you would do an internal revenue replacement, if you will, where we would not spend general fund dollars on things that are necessary. We would spend perhaps these funds and be able to take those general fund dollars and do other things. And that's where I believe the water may come into play in a better way, to not have some of the restrictions and be able to look at the areas we want to look at regardless of income or other strictures that are going to fall under some of that, or utilize it to be match money for CDBG or DEQ funds.
So Margaret, so you had mentioned earlier that expense reimbursement of $1 million. So if we submit that comes in the general fund, and if we could use that unencumbered money now toward a water project, or anything for that matter.
Sure.
So that's kind of, in a way, low-hanging fruit. Claim that, move it into the general fund, and
Right.
make it unencumbered.
Right. You could take the radios for our departments that are in there and move it over. You could take, things like that. Ambulance and remount this year, $365,000. You could shift those over. You could do an additional ambulance to try to get our fleet up to where it really needs to be, where we can't afford to do that normally. Those are definitely opportunities that we can do. And then, whether it's funds we do use this year or they just roll to general fund, that money will be sitting there, not budgeted this year, or we can use that budget for employees or positions or something else normal under general fund. Cost of living increase.
Margaret, when you say the year 2024, is that the year we've got to obligate the funds, or do they have to be spent? What's the timetable on spending the funds?
December 31st of 2026 is the spend date. You have to have it under contract or spent by December 31st of 2024. So if we had a construction project, as long as we have contracted for those funds and then spend them before December 31st of 2026, that would work. And at the rate cars are coming in, we could order them today and have them under contract and still not have them. We're still waiting on some from last year.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just amazed again that the five of us, we took in, I guess, 3 to build that jail, and our inmates get fresh water for showers, for drinking, and whatever, and we don't take care of our citizens that are been waiting for water for 30 years probably.
And sounded like I like all your suggestions on that, and it sounds like I don't remember all the specific water projects that we've looked at or proposal of where and how much, but I think that list would be very pertinent, Mark, if we could get together and, you know, any calls or concerns we've had, I think Jeff said last 3 years or even 5 years, maybe get together and maybe each, you know, actually, Commissioner Abel and Commissioner Taylor, it sounds like they've had a lot more calls than, say, for instance, I have. And so maybe get with them as well, and to help you pinpoint anything moving forward. Other questions, comments? What else do you need from us at this point? Probably a little more clarity in some respects, but we'll probably will have a little more clarity when we have more, like the presentation Tuesday.
On the building.
Yes, and then we get, a list of water projects, and, you know, it sounds to me like, you know, if we can, like, free up some funds in the general fund with that, maybe that COVID reimbursement, that sounds like possibly something that would be prudent for us to pull back so we have a lot more flexibility. And then, you know, we've been trying to replace ambulances, obviously, every year. This year, maybe we can, like you said, really get the fleet to where it needs to be. So, any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, let me ask one other one. If we decided to take the existing water lines we have, and I'm just gonna throw out a number, it could be, but you could do it at a discount, but we've never done a promotion to get people hooked up to where we already got water. Could we say to those groups, for the next 60 days, everybody that signs up, and I don't know what TAP is, Mark, but you get hooked up for water for half price. Or you get it free. Does that make a difference? And could we still apply that fund, that's part of that 10 million to that?
No, sir.
No, sir.
And actually, I don't believe you can do that under state statute, because we always have to look at that as well, not just the federal rules, but you can't simply waive stuff like that. So,
Just an idea.
it is, and I wish it was more feasible, but I believe that's gonna fall under a prohibition under the state guidelines. I can provide you with a significant list, but like I said, it's broad as you want to make it on what's eligible under the 10 million, basically. But I've just tried to throw out some things that are unusual to you or things that I'm aware of. We do have, like I said, some other lists, but they may or may not be your priorities or where your direction goes. So we just held them in case we knew which way you wanted to go. But is there something else you would need from us to help make your priorities? List of the water stuff, and then Tuesday's presentation, hopefully. Do you want us to be on the agenda for May for perhaps decisions, or do you want to just hold off and schedule something?
Well, at this point, I don't see how we'd have any, and y'all can tell me if you disagree. I don't see how we can have any decisions made by May. I think this is going to take a little longer because we're just now getting like the first presentation on HRCs. We have no idea what that's going to look like. We don't have any idea what the water projects will look like. So we'd like to hurry up and slow down as well, you know, so
That's fine.
it's one of those things, and I know you're waiting for guidance and you're in the middle of budget,
That's
so it's a
fine.
lot, but at this point, I just don't, this is a one-time opportunity with this much funding. We want to be careful and prudent with the dollars that we have, and
Of course.
like as previously mentioned, that would benefit the taxpayers to the fullest, so. But no, I would not put it on the May schedule.
You will have ARP on your May agenda because they found some more policies they want us to adopt, and Mr. Neef is in the process of writing up these new wording that they'd like to see you adopt that they added in the last 2 weeks. So
Okay.
they have apparently enough people up there sitting, thinking about what policies we could all pass to keep us all busy. So
Don't you love it?
Yeah, we do, we do. Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Margaret.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Margaret, before you leave, it's here kind of massaging some of the information that Wayne was giving about some of the folks that was needing water. Trying to figure out what the fastest way is that we could get water to some of the people in the county. February the 9th, the State Water Infrastructure Authority met and dispersed applications that were presented in September of 2021. You know, that's where we got our last $2 million grant from. In the drinking water section, there was 37 applications made for around $56 million. And then 30 applications were made for wastewater for around $101 million, 67 total grant applications. The fastest way for us to get water to these underserved areas, like Wayne was talking about down Highway 18, Old 18 South and those places like that, would be through the State Water Infrastructure Authority, where we received our first $2 million grant. I think we need, and now that we have a grant writer, and that was the purpose of this grant writer, if we can definitely see what the timeframes are, and I apologize, I'm not on the committee anymore, I can't remember when those application dates opened up. It was September of 21st, they did issue the funds on February the 9th of 22. I hope we could get a grant in under either viable utility reserves or the drinking water reserve or the wastewater reserve or the drinking water state revolving fund, and the last one is the clean water state revolving fund, one of those. And you're gonna have to get Mr. Delahunt to help you. As Commissioner Taylor said, there's a litany of folks that probably need water in the county. We probably need to see that list and as he said, prioritize which part of the county needs water the first, maybe the worst, whoever needs it immediately. But I think along with the ARPA funds that are coming in, we try to decide which funds can be utilized most immediately, you know, to serve the purposes that we're trying to do here or want to do here. SWIA may be the quickest way to get it done. Plus, we continue each year to make separate applications, which we have not done in the past. But now I'm hoping that our new grant writer will be able to take a look at those, nail down the dates for the applications, with Mark's help, identify the projects that are most in need of water right away. Obviously, rust in Burke County is a heck of a problem in the well systems. So I would encourage you to check on the State Water Infrastructure Authority, see what their dates are on the applications, see how it coincides with what the ARPA funding. And there is ARPA funding tied into SWIA too. So if we could get a report back on that maybe, so that we can make a more learned decision on how we want to proceed to take care of some of the water issues in the county.
So DEQ had a webinar last week, Jessica.
Yep.
And I can let her tell you about it. She's already done a webinar with them on their process for funding, so.
I don't have the timing nailed down, which I think is your primary concern, the timing of the rush. So I don't have that right in front of me, but they do have an application opening within the next 2 months, I believe.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so I can get some more
That sounds
information.
about the right time frame.
I think so, yeah. So I can get some information that in conjunction with what Mark has and see if we can't nail down a few locations that might benefit.
Okay.
She's on it.
Any other questions, comments? Thank God we've got a grant writer now, so,
We are
This
very
is-
appreciative to the board awarding that. She's already hit the ground running, and like I said, 3 grants applied in the last 2 weeks since she started with us and met with the departments and already done these webinars to find out what the cycles are and reached out to those state agencies to make sure she's on their disbursement list. So we're definitely pursuing everything we can. And when we met with her, when she first started, we did say that water is a priority, trying to find how we can fund that best and utilize whatever state and other dollars are out there, not just ours, to make sure we get it out there, so.
It just makes us feel good. We know we're not going to be missing any opportunities going forward. That's the most important thing.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. County Manager, did you want to?
No. I'll get with you later on.
Okay, you look like you wanted to say something. All right, gentlemen, if there's nothing else, I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Commissioner Abel. All those in favor? 5-0, Madam Clerk.